Have you ever noticed something strange? The students who spend the most time studying are not always the ones who get the best results. In fact, sometimes the person studying 6 hours a day performs worse than someone studying just 2. How is that possible? School tells us that success comes from working harder. Study longer, read more pages, highlight more lines, fill more notebooks. But what if that's completely wrong? What if the biggest reason people struggle to learn isn't because they're lazy, distracted, or not smart enough? What if it's because they've been taught the wrong way to study from the very beginning? Think about it. Most people spend over a decade in school, thousands of hours sitting in classrooms, thousands of hours preparing for exams. Yet when they leave school, many can't remember most of what they learned. Not because they failed, because the system trained them to pass tests, not to retain knowledge. And that's a problem, because in today's world, learning is no longer optional. The people who learn faster earn more, adapt faster, grow faster, and create opportunities that others never see. So if you've ever felt frustrated because you study for hours and still forget everything, if you've ever read the same page 3 times and realized nothing stuck, if you've ever wondered why some people seem to learn effortlessly while you struggle, stay with me. Because what you're about to hear could completely change the way you learn forever. Let's start with the biggest lie. The first thing schools teach you is that studying means consuming information. Read the chapter, watch the lecture, listen to the teacher, take notes, repeat. Sounds logical, right? The problem is that your brain doesn't learn by consuming information. It learns by retrieving information. This is one of the most researched findings in cognitive science. Reading something feels productive, but feeling productive is not the same as actually learning. Imagine watching someone lift weights. You can observe every movement perfectly. You can memorize the technique. You can even understand the science behind muscle growth. But until you actually lift the weights yourself, nothing changes. Learning works the same way. Every time you force yourself to recall information from memory, you're strengthening the neural pathways responsible for storing that knowledge. That's why students who constantly test themselves often outperform students who spend much more time rereading notes. The shocking part? Most people avoid retrieval because it feels harder. And that's exactly why it works. Your brain grows when it's challenged, not when it's comfortable. This leads to the second lie. Schools make you believe that understanding equals mastery. You sit in class, the teacher explains a concept, it makes sense, you nod your head, you think, I got it. But understanding something in the moment is not the same as being able to reproduce it later. Have you ever watched a YouTube tutorial and felt confident? Then tried doing it yourself the next day and realized you remembered almost nothing? That's the illusion of competence. Your brain mistakes familiarity for mastery. When information is in front of you, it feels easy. Reality appears. True learning is not recognizing information. True learning is being able to generate it without help. That's why elite performers constantly test themselves. Not because they enjoy struggle, because they know struggle reveals the truth. And the truth is the only thing that matters. Here's another belief that quietly destroys learning. Cramming. Everyone has done it. The night before an exam, coffee, stress, panic, hours of non-stop studying, then somehow passing. The problem? Passing an exam isn't the same as learning. Cramming creates temporary familiarity, not long-term memory. It's like writing a message on sand. For a moment it's visible, then the tide comes in, and everything disappears. Your brain needs time to strengthen memories. Scientists call this consolidation. Information becomes durable when it's revisited over time, not when it's forced into your head all at once. That's why spacing works. Instead of studying something for 5 hours in one day, study it for 1 hour across 5 days. The total time stays the same, but the results are dramatically different, because every review strengthens the memory when it's beginning to fade. And that fading is important. Most people think forgetting is the enemy. It's not. Forgetting is part of learning. Every time you retrieve information that was becoming difficult to remember, the memory grows stronger. The effort is the point. Which brings us to another dangerous myth. the belief that good studying should feel easy. Think about school. Students are rewarded when things come naturally, when answers arrive quickly, when learning feels smooth. But real growth often feels messy, slow, even frustrating. Imagine learning to ride a bike. Would you expect perfection after 10 minutes? Of course not. You wobble, you fall, you adjust, and eventually your brain figures it out. Learning complex skills works exactly the same way. The struggle isn't evidence of failure. The struggle is evidence that learning is happening. Unfortunately, many students quit during this phase. They assume difficulty means they're bad at the subject. So they stop, not realizing that everyone experiences the same discomfort. The difference is that successful learners keep going. They understand something powerful. Temporary confusion is often the doorway to permanent understanding. Now let's talk about note-taking, one of the most misunderstood study habits in the world. Walk into any classroom and you'll see students filling pages with notes. Color-coded highlights, beautiful diagrams, perfect organization. It looks impressive, but appearances can be deceptive. Many people spend more time creating notes than using them. The notebook becomes the goal instead of learning. Aesthetic productivity replaces actual progress. The question isn't how pretty your notes are. The question is whether they help you remember. Can you close the notebook and explain the concept? Can you teach it to someone else? Can you solve a problem using it? If not, the notes may be serving your eyes more than your brain. Some of the best learners in the world use surprisingly simple systems. Short summaries, flashcards, questions, self-testing, because they focus on retrieval, not decoration. Another lesson schools accidentally teach is that intelligence is fixed. You either have it or you don't. Some students are called gifted. Others are labeled average. Believe they're naturally smart. Others begin to believe they're naturally limited. Both groups become trapped. Because intelligence is not a static trait. The brain changes, adapts, reorganizes itself continuously. This concept is known as neuroplasticity, and it's one of the most important discoveries in modern science. Your abilities are not frozen, they're built. Every skill you've ever developed started as something you couldn't do. Reading, writing, speaking, walking, all of it was learned. The problem is that people see experts and forget the years of practice behind the performance. They see the result, not the process. They see confidence, not repetition. They see mastery, not struggle. And because of that, they underestimate what's possible for themselves. Now here's a question. Why do some people seem to learn faster than others? The answer might surprise you. It's often not because they have better brains. It's because they have better systems. They understand that learning is not an event. It's a process built on repetition, feedback, correction, testing, reflection. The best learners don't rely on motivation. Motivation is unreliable. Some days it's there, some days it's gone. Instead, they rely on systems. Small actions repeated consistently. Because consistency beats intensity almost every time. A person who studies effectively for 30 minutes every day will often outperform someone who studies 6 hours once a week. Not because they're working harder, because they're working with how the brain actually learns. And that's the key idea most schools never teach. Learning is biological. Power. It's not about suffering. It's not about sitting at a desk until you're exhausted. It's about understanding how memory works, how attention works, how habits work. Once you understand those principles, everything changes. Studying becomes more efficient, more enjoyable, and dramatically more effective. So what should you do starting today? Stop measuring learning by time spent. Measure it by retention. Stop asking, how long did I study? Start asking, what can I remember without looking? Stop chasing perfect notes. Start practicing active recall. Stop cramming. Start spacing your learning. Stop fearing mistakes. Start using them as feedback. Stop assuming struggle means failure. Recognize that struggle often means growth. Because the truth is simple. Most people don't have a learning problem. They have a strategy problem. They've spent years following methods that feel productive, but produce weak results. And once they replace those methods with approaches supported by actual cognitive science, everything changes. The hours become shorter. The results become better. The frustration begins to disappear, and learning becomes what it was always meant to be, a tool for transformation, not torture. So the next time you sit down to study, remember this: the goal isn't to spend more time with information. The goal is to make information stay. And the moment you understand that difference, you're already ahead of most people. Because everything schools teach about studying isn't completely wrong. But the most important lessons were often left out. And now you know them. The question is simple: will you keep studying the old way, or will you finally learn how to learn?